Hello lovely people, today I will be giving you a sneak peek behind the scenes on how I designed the logging railway for Series 2 of the BrickLink Designer Program. For those who haven't heard of it before, the BrickLink Designer Program gives LEGO fans the opportunity to design and submit their own models, with the chance of becoming a limited run set. The premise is similar to LEGO Ideas, but unlike LEGO Ideas where the selected models get redesigned by a LEGO designer, the chosen BDP models will be produced almost exactly as they were submitted. I've submitted a model to every series of the program so far, and for Series 2 my model was selected as one of the 5 finalists. I didn't quite know what the model was going to be when I first started building it, but I knew I wanted a small steam locomotive and I wanted to be able to motorize it. I'm building the locomotive around a powered up train motor. I knew that the train motor would not be available to use in BDP, but I wanted to ensure the model could be motorized, so I built the chassis of the locomotive around the train motor from the very start. I go through a few iterations, roughly laying out some shapes in 3D space until I get the shape I'm happy with. Next up is the cab. Again, the shape comes first here, and you'll see me move things around a bit, not quite worrying about connecting everything yet. You'll also see me move the camera around quite a bit while I'm building, looking at the model from every angle and deciding if it looks good or not. I make quite a few small adjustments here and there, like raising the roof by one plate, or changing the proportions of the front windows. If I get stuck on something, like I do here with the cab, I usually just leave it for a while and move my focus to a different area. Here I'm reworking the smoke box at the front of the locomotive and trying to give a little bit more bulk to the cylinders. Then I go back to the cab and add these visors above the front windows, which I think really helped give the front of the cab some extra visual interest. I changed the color of various parts of the locomotive throughout the build, trying out a few color schemes until I settle on one I like. With the locomotive mostly done, it's time to start thinking about the rest of the train. At this point I decide to go with the logging railway concept, so I start building a simple logging car. Apart from the logging car, I need somewhere for the battery hub to sit. My first thought is to add a passenger car with a baggage compartment behind the locomotive. I try out the train composition first by importing some existing wagons and quickly shortening them to see how the full train would look. I'm not entirely sold on the train yet, but I still continue with the idea for a while, making 2 different concept models for a passenger/baggage car. Ultimately, I don't like the look of either of these 2 cars behind the locomotive, and neither of them end up getting finished. At this point I decided to take a break from designing the train, and I started thinking about a display base. I had the idea to try and build a curved trestle bridge, and started playing around with some techniques to see if I could come up with something that would work. Getting the track right was the hardest part, since I wanted it to have a subtle curve, but have the same width as standard LEGO track and be compatible with all of the LEGO train wheels. While I'm mostly designing this model digitally in Studio, I'm also test building some prototypes of the bridge with real bricks as I'm working on it, making sure that everything works in real life and is stable enough to support the weight of the train. This is the bridge nearly done, although I end up removing a few details like the railings underneath to try and minimize the part count at least a little bit. After the bridge is finished, I shift my attention back to the train. At this point I've decided not to include a passenger car, but instead try to build some kind of freight wagon where the powered up hub could be integrated. I use the powered up hub as a starting point again, and once I'm happy with the design of the model, I will replace the hub and the train motor with a brick-built dummy version that can be used in the actual set. I briefly try hiding the hub inside a wooden crate, but ultimately decide to simply add some details on top to make the hub look like a power generator that the railway could be transporting. For the caboose, I go through a few iterations again before I come up with something that I liked, but finally the model was ready to submit. I rendered a few nice looking images of the model, wrote a description text and some notes for the BrickLink Designer team, and submitted the model. About 6 weeks later, while I was at the Bauspielbahn-treffen in Germany, I got an email inviting me to a video call. I took the call sitting on a wobbly picnic bench just outside the old tram depot where the BSBT is held, and there I got the amazing news that my model was selected to be one of the 5 finalists that would be moving forward into crowdfunding. After some paperwork, work started on getting mine and the 4 other models ready for crowdfunding. The goal of BDP is to produce the designs as they were submitted, but there are usually some small revisions that need to happen first. Although the guidelines are nowhere near as strict as they are for regular LEGO sets, the models still need to be approved by LEGO's model governance, and for that some minor changes were needed. In my case the changes were all very small, things like constraining the minifigure neck bracket that I'd used as the steps for the flat car. Along with these necessary changes, the BrickLink team also worked with us to suggest some possible improvements for the models. In my case we were able to replace the grey diagonal braces for the bridge with brown ones, because those parts had just come out in a new set and would still be available during the scheduled production window. After a few rounds of revisions, the models were approved by model governance, and the designs were locked. Now work began on the promotional images, box art and building instructions. Most of this work would be done by the teams at BrickLink and/or LEGO, and I was just there to occasionally give input or provide some feedback. As we were getting closer to the crowdfunding phase, I wanted to build up some hype for the model. I took it with me to the Noppelbanig L-Gauge meeting to show it off to the LEGO train community, and set it up outside in the forest to film a promotional video for the model. And that brings us back to today. Crowdfunding started 2 weeks ago, and the model passed the required 3,000 orders within the first 30 minutes. At the time of recording, the model has already been ordered over 10,000 times. The model is still available until June 30th, I'll leave a link to the pre-order page in the description. A big thanks to the team at BrickLink and to everyone else who has made this possible, and thank you for watching the video.